Welcome back to the next episode of Music Design. Today will be a special feature on Zora's Domain from The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. The Breath of the Wild score spotlights the piano with a much more atmospheric approach than in previous Zelda games. The three composers who worked on the game are Hajime Okai, Yasuaki Iwata, and Manaka Kataoka. All three decided on expressing the feeling of a large open world, letting the player experience the sounds of nature more than pushing music all the time in the player's ears. However, for town themes like Zora's Domain, the composers brought their A-game in developing and arranging key themes. Zora's Domain is, of course, one of the classic themes in Zelda. It was first created in Ocarina of Time by Koji Kondo. This version of Breath of the Wild still retains much of the same vibe and melody as the original. Let's take a closer look. Zora's Domain is one of the most intriguing pieces of music on the soundtrack, because it contains a variety of instruments not found anywhere else. This song is a good mix of organic instruments such as piano, the recorder, the harp, cello, and acoustic guitar, with some pure synths like the synth pad and the sine wave. The song is set at a slower paced 80 beats per minute. Most of the song is in 4/4 time, except for this brief bit in the intro. Lastly, the song length is set at around 1 minute and 46 seconds at the loop point. Let's dig in further in the song. The intro begins in 3/4 time. One of the key factors found in Zora's Domain is modulation. Modulation is when you suddenly shift keys in the song. So in the piano, the first arpeggiated chord played here is a minor 7, which modulates up to B minor 7. This modulates again to C minor 7. While keeping the same chord shape, the composer masterfully ascends upward, from A to B to C, and then finally landing on the D sus chord. This last chord perfectly prepares the listener to begin the first section of the song, which is a lush G major 9, a 5/7 to a 1 chord. The next element in this intro is the synth pad. A small note, but look at how the piano and the synth pad play in contrary motion, meaning that they move in opposite directions. What's also fascinating about this contrary motion is that the synth pad will descend one note down each measure, and contrary to the piano, it goes in the opposite direction. As you can see, I combined a variety of different synths together to make up this atmosphere here. I'll cycle through the various instruments and notice the quality and the tone of each. On top of everything, I doubled a harp to give a pluckiness to the sound. The recorder is a new instrument not featured in any of the previous iterations of Zora's Domain. It provides a realism to the song. Notice too that it's combined with another flute to harmonize with the recorder. For the last instruments here, percussion we'll talk about more in the next section, but the sine wave transitions us to the next section. This instrument is in solo mode, meaning that you can only play one note at a time. I also set a quick glide effect whenever I move between two notes. Take a listen to this intro with everything together. Section 1. One of the reasons why this section sounds very relaxed is due to the breathy synth pad. I set the sustain higher than usual to allow even a short note to last a while. This is so I can allow a natural fade out of the note without holding it down. As you can see, another airy synth pad I doubled a sixth interval below provides extra harmonics. Let's take another look at that piano. The first chord is a G major 9 chord. And then halfway through, the second chord is a C major 7 with G in the bass. Note that the same G is present in both chords. In fact, if we take a look at the cello, it will also be holding down a G note throughout this entire section. This is called a pedal tone. Using a pedal tone usually won't allow any surprising twists in the song, which is good for a song like this, where we need to establish a relaxing atmosphere. Let's take a look at the percussion. This is one of my favorite instruments in the song, actually, because it's methodical and delicately placed. It's made up of a number of different components, first starting with a kick and 2 shakers. And then after that comes a striking tambourine note. Then later on in this measure we have a shaking tambourine. And then finally a sleigh bell in the variation of the second measure. Everything is nice and soft to allow the other instruments to shine. The acoustic guitar is introduced. It functions in much the same way as the original song in Ocarina of Time, being the background melody instrument with the piano. Both are played well together. This guitar is quite syncopated in its melody. If I turn on the metronome, note how rhythmically interesting this melody is. Now in the second half of section 1, let's turn our attention back to the piano. Allow me to play this beautiful section soloed. This section is not as complex as it seems. These twisting chords will use a specific pattern that repeats every 3 measures. Secondly, the intervals will switch between the 6th and the 5th interval, except for the first measure. Let me play this slowed down. Finally, in this short transition section, the composer slides down to an F chord and then to an A sharp chord so that we can smoothly head into section 2. Hear this section once more. This section 2 becomes more ambient, spearheaded by just 4 instruments at first. The synth kicks off this section by sliding up to an F. As you can see, I doubled it an octave below with another synth pad. The notes will then steadily descend chromatically downward before sliding up to another F sharp, which is a half step above this F. It'll then begin to walk down again chromatically. the harp and the guitar are essentially doubled. The guitar works around the G minor 7 chord, and as you might have guessed, we start to modulate down one half step at a time. The second half becomes a bit more complex with the pattern, but it follows in much the same way. Piano returns right at the halfway point, starting off softly, before playing this really cool sequence. What is fascinating about this sequence is that each chord here is using a different interval before repeating the pattern. It first starts with a 7th interval, by a 6th, then a 5th, another 5th, and then a 6th, and then a 6th here. And then it repeats that pattern. The last chord ends on a classic diminished chord, played in F sharp. Now before we leave this section, the glockenspiel will double the piano during the sequence, supplying a tinkling high. Let's hear this section once more. Section 3 sounds wonderful because we transition so well from the last section. You might be wondering if this is the loop point, but we actually just modulated it into a new key. This section sounds exactly the same except for that point, and also the glockenspiel will continue to accompany the other instruments. Take a listen to just the glockenspiel, the percussion, and the piano. Lastly, let's listen to this section one more time. The arranger of this piece of music truly brought to life the ambience back into Zora's domain. This was an incredibly fun song to recreate and showcase to you all, and we should applaud the 3 composers who created such magical tunes in Breath of the Wild. I want to thank all my current Patreons on the crowdfunding site Patreon. These include Kevin Huin, Sam Hanley, Monish Corona, Dennis Mowers, and Alan Brown. Thank you all so much for exploring the music of Breath of the Wild. I hope to see you all soon in the next episode of Music Design.